Hi, beautiful priestesses. Welcome, welcome. You're here with Jessica and Jessica, a duo today. I'm Jessica Hadari, and I'm the founder of Opulent Priestesses and Rebel Priestesses, and I support women trailblazers in leading with pleasure and mending the world with divinely guided rebellion and defiance. So I'm so delighted to be here to have this just kind of lounge around deep conversation with my friend Jessica Tomlinson. And Jessica, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and say hi to the lovely women who are watching this.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jessica. I love how you describe what you do is so rich and juicy. I'm like, ooh. um, what I do is I help support women coaches and entrepreneurs who are really wanting to get their voice out there in a bigger way, but they might be struggling with things like rejection or not good enough or, too much, all these things that we kind of struggle with, and get them on camera so that they can really share their authentic messages from a place that's true for them with the world. And so that's really what I help them do on video.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, I'm so excited about the work that you're doing because I know that a lot of women, whether it's speaking on a live stage or doing videos, both of which are such powerful ways to really reach out to the planet and create immediate intimacy and shift. And yet we'll kind of shy away from that out of many different fears of being seen, or just the technical stuff gets in the way, or the to-do list gets in the way. So I love that this is, part of your path and the work that you do. Super awesome and totally needed.
Thank you. Yeah. And I find, it's interesting because I've been a public speaker in some sort of limelight. I've done 3 TEDx women events and led my own circles and spoke on stages, but I find that oftentimes the camera is even scarier, even though I've done this so many times, it's like that thing that's like staring at you. So I just
Yes.
love holding women in that space of it's okay. And really that letting go, surrendering, and letting them, their true aligned selves come through. So
Thank you so much for saying that. I'll talk in a moment about our reason for having this conversation, or the topic that we wanted to dive into in many different ways. And I will dovetail on what you just said, because I do think it's so important. And I think all of this dovetails into what we'll be speaking about today and what we'll be conversing about. I know for myself, when I'm speaking live or I'm on stage, it's like there's this 3D experience of me, and they also kind of get the transmission from like my body language and what I'm wearing and the way I'm carrying myself and the eye contact I'm making around the room. When I'm on video, it's just this, like there might be a little bit of movement, but I have this spatial paralysis, and it is really hard for me to look at the recordings of my videos because I also just notice it so much more because it's much more 2D experience. And I feel like it's this amplification of this thing with my face that I wish I wasn't there. I've accepted it, but it's hard to look at with video. And I resonate with what you're saying because I have been able to just kind of get over that and really focus on like the women I'm speaking to versus that mind chatter. And if I didn't, then we wouldn't be here. And so I feel grateful for the work that you do, and it's so in alignment with some of the internal work I've had to do, and that I know that there are other women out there that are just in the middle of that. And there is this other side where it doesn't matter your weight or your gender or your color or any kind of physical things that are going on with your face or any other part of your body, but you can like still transmit through video.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that work.
You are so welcome. And I love that you just said that, because I was just sharing with a client that exact reason. I'm like, it's so much easier when you can feed off of other people and be in the room and you've got all these like tangible physical things. But when you're on camera, it's like, oh my God, it's me. It's all me. And so like learning. And I also love what you said about like, yes, like it's you, but you're the transmitter. So it's really more about the message than about like, the vessel. We really are just the vessels, which is important, but it takes the pressure off of having to be perfect.
Yes, Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that like one of the main things that we both kind of got goosebumps about and that we wanted to talk about was and this is in my own words, so I'm definitely want to turn the kind of the talking stick over to you in a moment. But this importance of and the importance for women to make powerful requests,
Mm.
um, and to actually ask for what we want and to say what we want. And this absolutely ties into like how we show up, how authentic we are. It comes out in our interactions with men, our interactions with women, our interactions with our clients, and our interactions with the world and the universe. And like, what are we praying for? What are we asking for? What are we negotiating for what we want in relationships? It also ties in with boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and like speaking to our desires and what is wanted versus kind of focusing on what is not wanted and kind of like pushing the world away and pushing
Yeah.
relationships away. So that's my like in a nutshell of what I kind of, you know, all the rabbit holes that I hope we can figure out. But I wanted to just turn the talking stick over to you and just your own, like, why is it so important? What is at stake for women if we don't collectively learn how to powerfully ask for what we want and know what we want? And and why is it important?
Yeah. Mm. I can just like feel it in my body because it's just so important. What's coming to me is like to our soul. Like our soul needs to be able to dream. And that's really kind of what's present to me right now is like we've lost, I don't want to say we, because I'm, there's been times in my life, I'll speak for myself, where it's a challenge to give myself permission to get back to that childlike state of dreaming. I mean, just think of like how we were as kids, right? So I think what's at stake here is really living the fullest life possible. And I kind of hate those like blanket statements. It sounds very generic, but I lost two best friends this year that were both 33 years old. And like, so for me, this living life to the fullest, we never know when we're going to die. Like, it's real. We are not immortal, unfortunately. We are very mortal. And so for me, it feels like this bigger conversation of like, goddess, like at the end of the day, if you died tomorrow, are you going to be happy with the amount of dreams that you've even allowed yourself to dream are possible? So I think that's just, it feels so like there's a lot of rawness in the air right now between the political climate and these conversations we're having and hate and men and women and, like rising up and really like claiming that we are not only worthy, but really just allowing ourselves to expand into that fullness. And we can't even ask for what we want unless we know what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think so many times, like the risk is that if we don't claim something now, like we get so caught up into the perfection of like, oh, it must be perfect. I'm going to allow myself to dream of this big thing that needs to look a certain way. But like, what would happen if we just claim something now? Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I do notice that there are a lot of women that I talk with in my community. I mean, there's definitely many women who are like powerfully out there. They move through the world as like deeply centered women. They ask for what they want. And often their experience of life is that they then also get a lot of what they ask for. But there are a lot of women that just get really quagmired in the kind of, I don't know, I'm not clear whether it's anything from like choosing their niche for their business or, like any other part of their life, kind of getting overwhelmed by their to-do list. And it's almost like this not knowing what we want is very much tied in with our overwhelm. and
Yeah.
with allowing ourselves to be pulled out of our center by circumstances, whether that's, the political happenings or just really, it's beautiful to deeply empathize with
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in the world. And we
Mm-hmm.
can take action on that empathy by, donating money or resources or whatever, or even like, traveling to a country to help out. So there are things that we can do so that we don't feel so helpless
Yeah.
in that empathy. But I think sometimes we just allow ourselves to be kind of like blown this way and that way in the wind. And it
Mm-hmm.
kind of leads to like this kind of like bland state of, I don't know. And I just feel like there's so many women, too many women, they get pulled off of their spiritual path and get pulled
Mm-hmm.
out of their mission and out of their vision by
Mm-hmm.
circumstances.
Yeah.
And so I guess I wanted to just kind of go maybe into the realm of emotions and
Mm-hmm.
authenticity, because it is important that we feel and empathize. But
Mm-hmm.
like, what is the relationship with being a deeply feeling woman, being
Mm-hmm.
in empathy, feeling the pain of the world, and also powerfully like creating and asking for what we want and calling in the life that we want?
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, what keeps coming to me as you're saying this is it all comes down to trusting yourself. It's trusting ourselves. Like, and this is very present to me because just a few months ago, like I'm going through this whole grief process. And with my friends who have died, that's what's most real for me right now. And somebody asked me what I needed the other night. And I was like, I don't know. And then what came out of me was like, oh my God, I'm so scared. It's been a long time since I've not known what I need. And then what came out of me next was, I feel like I don't trust myself to even know. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, that's what it is. Somehow I'm making meaning because I'm like absorbing this whole situation, which, yeah, it's like heavy stuff, right? Like wherever
Mhm.
you are as a woman right now, like maybe my guess is you're probably feeling a lot of everything that's going on, whether it's in your own personal life or the world. But it's like we tend to absorb that and then
Mm.
turn it into meaning for what it means for us,
Mhm.
instead of remembering that like no matter what, we can still trust what we need in this moment. And I think
Mm.
that's really the emotion, is like the emotion. I don't even know if that's an emotion, but for me it is. It feels like an emotion, trust. And I think those are really closely related, as trust and authenticity. Because if you don't trust yourself, how are you going to know what's right for you? And then how are you going to be able to be aligned with what's authentic for you?
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
really see like authenticity as like the embodiment of trusting yourself.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
so it's like the physical embodiment, the way you show up, the things you say, the requests you make, the boundaries you set. It's like that is actually the manifestation of the trust that you have with
Mm.
yourself.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I love what you were saying about your own experience of being an I don't know, because that is a huge experience. It's not that that is like a bad or wrong experience, because sometimes we can be in certain places in our life in a place of I don't know for, months or years. It
Yeah.
is a human experience and we will all have that experience. But I love what
Mm-hmm.
you said about you were connecting with a girlfriend who
Mm-hmm.
asked you, and then you were able to feel like what was underneath the I don't know. And what I
Mm-hmm.
love about that, it was just like, oh, right. Like one of the ways that I kind of compass my way through the world, especially when like shit hits the fan, or I'm in deep grief, or I'm in I don't know, or I just feel really stuck, is the loving reflection of other women that I trust. And I just
Mm-hmm.
thought, like, what a beautiful invitation for the women that are here, is just like a little takeaway of like being the kind of girlfriend that when you see your friend kind of in overwhelm or quagmired or in that kind of uncomfortable place of I don't know, to just
Mm-hmm.
have the wisdom to be curious about that, with the understanding that there might actually be like lots of layers underneath that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like in your case, it was like there were some fears and grief that was related to some of the things you're experiencing, but also trust. But that your girlfriend kind of created a space for you to have that realization is
Yeah.
really beautiful. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, the importance of like women supporting other women with our curiosity and with our deeply feeling selves. Yeah, I love that. That's gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah. It was such an interesting experience. And, I think that to give women a tangible way that they can kind of support people in this not knowing what they need, a question that might help is like, that's acknowledging her, it's amazing. It's okay that you don't know. Like, let's just be in that uncertainty. But what do you know right now? Like, what do you know? If you don't know that, like, what do you know? Or in Oprah words, what does she say? Like, what I know for sure. And I think that helps us. What that does is it helps us come back home to that trust of like, well, if I don't know this, or I don't know what I need over here, what do I know for sure? And then maybe there's like something that says, what I do know is that I need a hug. Like I think sometimes we get into like the bigger, like, and this comes down to like the desires of our life, right? If we kind of just boil it down to like these very tangible things, like we can start small and then kind of grow it out there. Like the expansion to be able to even receive. There's something, around this. And especially for like leaders and women and your priestesses and messengers, this is so important because we're using our voices a lot, whether it's getting on video or stage or just gathering in women's circles, being able to trust that like whatever's coming up and out in that moment is perfect and is for your greatest good and the greater good of humanity, really.
I love that. That kind of ties back into the authenticity. And I do feel like one of the ways that women lead that's very powerful and compelling, I don't know. I actually don't know if it's different for men. I actually don't know if there's much difference between men and women and being powerful in this way, but to be open enough, and I would even say vulnerable enough to get teary-eyed when you're on stage speaking, or to really like let an emotion roll through you when you're doing video or when you're relating with clients. Not that we need to like break down and like totally lose it on stage, but to like allow ourselves to show up as deeply feeling women, I do think is kind of a key to feminine leadership. Because when I'm like, for example, watching, Meryl Streep or like some of these great actresses, it's like the reason we pay, millions of dollars or billions of dollars as a culture to watch these women perform in movies is their ability to like lead with their emotions in a way that's very compelling and powerful. I wanted to ask you, we had a previous conversation last month about, you made a distinction between vulnerability versus responsibility. And I wanted to just give you the talking stick to kind of go into that. Like, what does that mean? Whatever you wanted to say about vulnerability versus responsibility or anything else.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good because based on what you were just saying about giving ourselves permission as women to like show up and move people with our emotions. I think I have a good example and a story. So about 4 months ago, I was invited to be part of a group in New Zealand. And I think I was telling you a little bit about this, Jessica, where the first part of our trip, it was 40 entrepreneurs. We got to speak on stage in a stadium. And I was, well, first of all, I think it's important to tell you that the night before we had a circle. And I was super in my grief because I had found out my second friend died right when I landed in New Zealand. And it was like, oh my God, like, first of all, I don't know any of these people. I just don't want to be here right now. Like, I don't feel connected to myself, to them. Like I was making all, these stories and also honoring the emotions. But we had a circle. So I was in my grief. We had a circle the night before we were going to be speaking in this huge stadium. This is like one of my dreams. And everybody's kind of like sharing, and we're supposed to be doing like clearings, I'm assuming your women probably know what that means, but like kind of letting go of any things that are top of mind that could be weighing you down or things that need to be said. And everybody was like saying such like happy, nice things, happy, nice things. And I was like, rah, and my like fierce woman just came out. And I was like, I just have to say that I'm freaking terrified. And like, I was probably the one who's spoken the most on stage, which is hilarious. But I was just letting myself be in that without needing to, so the vulnerability, without needing to feel responsible for how I was supposed to be showing up.
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? Like, I felt like there was this responsibility in the room that everybody was kind of taking on, like, I must be strong right now. And that's the thing that's going to get me through to have an amazing talk on stage, is if I like am like confident. And for me, it was actually clearing that like, I'm freaking terrified. And I had, you know, a breakdown and cried. And people were kind of coming up to me afterwards and they're like, do you feel better now? And I was like, it's not like I felt bad to begin with. I just needed to say that. So now I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? So then the next day when I ended up getting on stage, I also had to give myself permission to be in the vulnerability versus a responsibility of like creating this story that I needed to get on stage and not cry in front of all these people in a huge stadium, you know, that I was there to be a leader and to just do my talk, and that I should just kind of push these emotions that were very present for me to the side. And instead of the responsibility of that, I gave myself the permission to have vulnerability, and I got on stage and I did almost cry. I didn't actually shed a tear, but I felt, and I honored my friends before I did my talk. And I just told everybody, this is the state I'm in. And yeah, so I think there's that distinction between, like you said, it's not like we should be like, you know, just getting stuck in the like, and I even hate using that term because it feels like we're making it wrong, but it's like, if you are a leader, one of the things that's really important is people want to hear how you shifted, even if it was like a tiny shift. And that is what is like, wow, like not only is this woman real because she's showing me her emotion, but now I'm inspired by her and I don't feel like weighed down, and like we can all lift each other up. And I think we have a responsibility as women to share how we are making it through these life things, you know, like even if it doesn't feel like we are.
It's like allowing ourselves to be human, that versus thinking we always have to show up as like superwoman, like pull ourselves up with our bootstraps. And I love that. I had an experience on Monday where it was one of my events. I was sick, like I wasn't feeling well. I was definitely like under the weather. And normally what I would do in that situation is to just kind of call out the elephant in the room, like, hey ladies, I'm so glad that you're here. But I just want to let you know, I'm feeling a little under the weather, a little vulnerable. So I just wanted to share that, just to kind of be like honest, to be upfront, because I know they can pick up on that. But if I'm acting all powerful, it creates an incongruency that actually leads to distrust. Like she's putting on these big movements or like whatever, this gesturing or a certain kind of front. Women can like smell a front, you know? And I ended up not doing that. I don't even know why. And I really regret it. It wasn't the end of the world. People liked the event, but it's like, I kept myself from having this experience of intimacy I usually have with my audience. I kept myself safe from having that. And came away dissatisfied because I could look back with regret that I basically had like the walls up, or I had like a facade of like, I'm great. And so it was interesting to just so recently have this thing that I would like never tell a client to do. In fact, the opposite, you know, that I did the thing that I like we're talking about not doing it, you know, had this experience, and man, do I regret it. I really kept myself from having more depth and intimacy with this wonderful group of women. And there's something about that I really regret, because I wasn't in my authenticity. I wasn't honest. And I wanted to, you know, it's interesting because I think women, there's a little bit switching gears, but I know that another thing we wanted to talk about, we're talking about feminine leadership and asking for what you want. So we'll circle back to that. But there's this other piece when we talk about feminine leadership, you know, part of that is also cultivating within ourselves, like trust and safety with men, that we're out, women leading out in the world, we have interactions with men, there are men leaders as well, and in a way we all need to link arms and move forward together. But there's this way that women, I think consciously or unconsciously, whether it's in romantic relationship or whether it's in business, that we will kind of pretend that everything's a-okay with men. And I think my sense is that they actually really want to feel us. Like one of the ways that men feel is through the emotions of women. Like women draw men into their feeling state, and a good man wants that. Like a man that like wants to be healthy and high vibration, like wants to feel a woman. And so I guess I wanted to also just turn the talking stick over to you to talk about like our emotions, our powerful request, our being in our truth, and how that relates to relating with men, or our rift in trust, or our rift in leadership, and anywhere you want to take that.
Yeah. Oh, this is a topic I'm so passionate about. So good. Because I fully believe in the power of women. And one thing that I say all the time is I know I am a much better woman with my man. And it doesn't even have to be like if you don't have a partner, it can be just the men in your life, right? Like if your dad or a mentor or men friends. But I truly believe that one thing that needs to be healed so much is this like, women, we can do it all together, or together is important, right? All of us women, but we can do it alone, even as a group of women. Because to me, that's still only 50% of the population. I'm sorry, guys. Like, this is like a conversation that I feel like really needs to be had. And it's like, why would we do that to ourselves? Like, we are worthy. We are priestesses, as you say. Like, men want to support. They so are craving it. And I know firsthand that I denied men's support for so long. So long. Like, I'll never forget, this is a random example with like my brother, but I was struggling really bad financially one Christmas, and I had broke my cell phone. And this is my younger brother. And he's like, Jess, we're going to go to the store. I'm going to buy you a phone. And I'm like, like bawling, because this is my brother. And it was like that first moment where I was like, oh my God, he wants to support me. And this is his way of doing it. And it was just, it touched me so much. Like, and it doesn't have to be financial. It can be emotional. And what I know is that when we lean into the support of men, because so many times we close off our receiving muscles, even by saying like, oh, no. One example I like to use is like, I've got my luggage. Like, how many times does a man ask you on a plane, do you need help with that? Say yes. I don't care. You have nothing to prove. You are strong. We know you can lift it. Just say yes and see what it feels like. Or he wants to open the door for you. Don't rush to open it first. And I say this because I used to do all these things. And I know for a fact that women, we are so much more able to do our work in the world when we're able to surrender to that support from men. And like, it's just the receiving muscles. So important. I love this topic.
Yeah. And also there's this piece about, not that we don't want to, like, I'm kind of veering a little more into the romantic piece of relating with men, but like, not that we don't want to get dolled up for a date. And, there's something that's fun for some of us. Not all women wear makeup. Not all women want to wear high heels. But for women who like that, it's kind of fun to get ready for a date, or, to do my hair and makeup. I don't for every single date, but it's fun to do that. But talk about that piece, especially since, you work with women around video and like showing up in a way that is, attractive and, but also authentic. But like when we talk about relating with men, what is the difference between, like, how do you know when you're being authentic, but you're still like being a physically beautiful version of yourself by kind of getting dolled up, versus
Yeah.
kind of getting dolled up as a way of like being someone else or wearing a kind of a facade.
Yeah.
Not like, how do you know when you're being authentic? Like, what's the internal barometer for
Yes.
that?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good topic that I'm so glad you brought up. I would say the biggest takeaway is for you to recognize within yourself, are you doing this for the fun or are you doing it for the fix?
Mm.
Okay, so key barometer. And now I know this for myself because I actually used to be flipped where I had really short hair because I wanted to be seen as like smart and corporate and like I've got it all together and take me seriously, because I've always my whole life got the comment of like, oh, you're a sweet little blonde, like, oh, you're
Mm.
stupid, like, and I've gotten these comments from men and women, or
Yeah.
yeah, from men and women. And so for me, my protective mechanism was opposite. It was to wear no makeup. It was to not look sexy. It was to have my hair short,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what happened for me is that I actually had to step into owning, fuck yeah, like, sorry if I can't cuss, but I am a beautiful woman and I am owning that my looks don't make me who I am. But
Mm-hmm.
I was so afraid that they did, that like it was like my shield, so I think first, that's the first step, is like owning that like our looks don't make us who we are, and yet it's okay to give yourself permission to have fun and
Yeah.
to like dress yourself up and be beautiful and make yourself feel good, and for others to adore you, like, and
Mm-hmm.
that you're first and foremost like doing it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I get dressed up just so I can get a reaction from my guy. And it's fun for me, and I love that he recognizes it and says, wow, babe, you look really good. And we shouldn't be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Like, we're meant to be these beautiful creatures. Like, own it.
Mm. I was
Yeah.
talking with my friend Mei Vu yesterday and talking about how my experience of like adorning myself and getting dressed up, which I actually don't do every day. Like most days I've got like a hat on and I wear these big glasses and like kind of baggy yoga attire. And that's
Yeah.
just, and no makeup.
Yeah.
Um, but when I am adorning myself, like for an event or a date or a women's circle or whatever, it's
Mhm.
for me, it's almost this devotional experience. It's just it's a self-care practice where I kind of
Mhm.
go into this meditative state. It's a little bit like painting, like the same experience I have when I'm painting or sewing something intricate, where I go into this creative flow. And
Yeah.
in that state of creative flow is often where I am able to kind of break free from like mental constructs. Like I often receive downloads in creative space. It's often where I feel like I'm more open to like the wisdom of the divine or my higher self.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, I guess this is the first time I'm putting it together in this way, that in the authentic enjoyment of
Mhm.
beautifying and adorning, which is many thousands year old legacy of women adorning themselves as a spiritual practice. I mean,
Mhm.
historically, women adorned themselves because there was like these kind of religious or spiritual aspects to it.
Yeah.
That in that process, can become even more authentically myself if I'm
Mhm.
utilizing the beautification as like a practice, as a meditation and a deepening. So
Yeah.
that's cool. I'm just kind of like
Yeah.
taking that in here. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. And it feels very like, yeah, this is an intentional process for you. And I think that's probably a very important point as well, is like where we become unaligned with our authentic self is when we're doing it out of a should. And I
Mm-hmm.
did that for a long time, and even when I first started getting on camera for an entire year, I owned a business with a boyfriend of mine, and we did videos every single week. And we thought we were really hot stuff. And we were great performers. Hello, here we are. And we're both like, and he looks like this sexy politician, and I felt very cute by his side, and yet we got like 2 clients in an entire year. And so I learned a lot from what it really
Mm-hmm.
means to show up authentically, and how much more powerful that is than just looking good on camera and putting on a show. Because like you said, people can feel you. They can feel when something's off and you're pushing and you're not being real. And so what matters is be real to you. Like, just be real to you. And if you feel nervous about it, like I've done videos before where I wear no makeup and I've just been crying.
Yeah.
And I just acknowledge it. Like you so beautifully said, you usually do, like when something's up for you, it's the acknowledgement, I think, that is so freeing, not just for you as like a leader, but for the people who are with you. Like, oh, wow, what like it's like freedom. Somebody's being real,
Yeah, gorgeous. Well, I wanted to just go down one more little rabbit hole before we complete our conversation. But so far we've touched on like the power of being in the truth of your emotions, and like how that translates into how you show up and are kind of witnessed by other people. I love what you said about vulnerability versus responsibility. Because as women, we do kind of sometimes maybe grapple with beliefs that we have to take care of people by not being vulnerable or not being authentic or not really speaking our truth. And we also kind of dove into like trust and trusting men and being vulnerable with men and giving ourselves permission to like have fun with our interactions with men and to allow them to support us as part of our healing. And this last piece, just kind of brings them into mind, like this archetype that you talk about sometimes about the sexy feminine. I love what you said in your Facebook lives about the archetype of the sexy feminine and how that is related to like not being a woman that's out there like pushing, which you just mentioned again. So maybe say a little bit about like the relationship between really being in your sexy feminine and asking for what you want or claiming what you want, which is kind of how we started this conversation off. But the relationship between that archetype and like being a woman who is like calling in the life that she wants.
Yeah. I love the archetype. So I actually have 3 that I've created. And this one, the sexy feminine is, she's important in business and videos, and she's also important in life and relationships. Like it can be applied to any avenue of your life. And yeah, she is all about that surrender, the receiving. She's really the goddess. And my mantra for her is give yourself permission to be and be good enough. To be and be good enough, because there's nothing to prove. And that is really where, like, if we picture, like the surrender of literally like leaning back and like opening our bodies and our hearts and our legs and just that full body receiving, that is the way that things can come in and can flow in. And she's the element of water. So I have assigned different elements to the archetypes just so you can like tangibly feel them. And one thing that I really want to be clear about the sexy feminine is sometimes we can just picture her as kind of like this, just all heart, which she is. And she's so powerful. And that's where the asking for what you want comes from. And the difference between her and another one of my archetypes, the Radiant Rebel, is that she asks with just like her body. She doesn't have to really even do anything. She just powerfully holds like her desire, or if she does ask for what she wants, she doesn't make a big deal out of it. It's like, this is what I'd like. And then it's just like there's power in the pause, right? So she's really brilliant at that. And that's the space in between that receiving. Whereas like my other archetype, the Radiant Rebel, is like more fiery and fierce and like might like want to tell you, for 2 minutes why she wants what she wants. And that's just another way of operating, and we need them all. But, this archetype I think is so needed for women as we grapple with this conflict of feeling like we need to prove that we're enough. So, there is power. I have learned when I shut up, like things just like people want to support me or things come in that I've been asking for. And it's really all about that like embodiment.
I
Yeah.
think this is huge because there's two complaints that I hear, one from the entrepreneur world and one from talking with men. In the
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur world, and I've experienced this, I've probably also been quote unquote guilty of it at times, but I'm at a networking event, usually it's with women, and I'm asking women, so like, what do you do? What are you creating in the world? And
Yeah.
I get this like 5 minute like explanation of every nitty gritty detail. It's a little bit
Mm-hmm.
feels like uh you want me to marry you, but like we haven't had the first date yet, like it's a little like
Yeah.
like allow for some back and forth, or just like really clean up your what do you do statement, you know so that it's like boom. So it has me leaning in and like naturally asking you questions. Oh, like what does that mean? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And the something that I've just consistently heard from men as well is that they'll go on dates with women, and like the woman, it's like she fills all of the space with talking to, not that women haven't had this experience with men too, it's kind of a human thing that some humans do. So I actually want to back up and say that not only women do this, but I
Yeah.
think we tend to just kind of go with the flow, and we get excited and we kind of forget to listen and leave space
Mm-hmm.
for the interaction and the sexual tension and the curiosity to arise from him, and out of, maybe it's out of nervousness, I don't know, but it is maybe also a symptom of um, possibly just our discomfort with being in the unknown. We talked about being in the unknown and how that's uncomfortable, and like giving space and curiosity to see like, well, what's underneath that uncomfortable experience of the unknown. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that definitely comes out in like flirtation or seduction, or even
Yes.
the flirtation that happens in business where we're just like finding our synergy together,
Mm-hmm.
to be uh, willing to allow for those spaces.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this because oftentimes what can happen is people misconstrue this archetype as well for, they take it to the extreme and it becomes manipulative. So that's really
Mhm.
what I think we're afraid of, is we're not comfortable in our body. We're not comfortable just locking eyes with somebody, and we're not comfortable. It really comes down to our body, and like we have been so conditioned to like the words that we say are very important, and just being in our body makes us, either not smart or like,
Mm.
I don't know.
Mhm,
There's a
mhm.
bazillion things you could create, based on your own experiences. But um, for me, I think I really had to learn to just get comfortable with my own body, and to know that like connecting with the eyes, whether it's a man or a woman, is just like, wow, what a beautiful like exchange of the soul. And
Mm.
and to not make that mean something like, yeah, like I'm uber trying to seduce you, but at the same time there is like a little bit of like awesomeness in the seduction process, like you're saying. So just finding that dance with what feels good to you. And
Mm.
there really is yeah, that like the over talking. I used to be guilty of it because I just was not comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
um, Power of the pause. There is that. And that's that receiving as well. It's just like
Mhm.
space.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said about just like making a request, like this is what I want, whether it's a sexual request, whether it's a business request, whether it's a prayer to the universe, and just like boom, here's my affirmation. Boom, it's like
Yeah.
one sentence. This is what I
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. I know. And this is what like I've taught so many people when it comes down to really making those requests and even setting boundaries. It's the same thing. If we over talk, it tends to feel like we've got something to prove,
Mhm.
or that
Mhm.
like we're gonna, and then we end up kind of, especially with a boundary, like we end up talking ourselves out of it. So we're like,
Mm.
I'm gonna pass on this event. And here's my bazillion reasons why, and oh, now that I think of it, maybe I can make it work, and blah, 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 and we're just like,
Yeah.
instead of just, here's what it is and it's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, what I'm taking away from this conversation is definitely the word spaciousness comes to mind. It's like you talked earlier at the earlier part of the conversation about just like in the midst of overwhelm or not knowing, just finding like, well, what is my next step? And what is my next step? And slowing down to like feel the feelings and hear the thoughts that are happening underneath any fears or stuckness or overwhelm. And then there was also this whole piece that we just talked about really like leaning back and receiving support, whether it's from men or women, as being a huge part of like not only slowing down enough to like make a request, but to slow down and be supported in that request. Like that's a practice. Those are like muscles that we think as women kind of need to like tone up a little bit. And then this last piece, just in general, just slowing down and finding the power in the pause. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for just having this, sister back and forth with me. I hope you women who are watching this also are just finding tidbits that resonate with you, and little bite-sized pieces that you can just take with you on your journey. I want to invite you to continue to stay connected with us. And of course, Jessica and I have both kind of peppered this video down below. And if you're watching this on the website, some delicious free gifts. So we want you to just enjoy staying connected with us in all the ways that you can here in this video, but also just continue to reach out to us in the ways that we've given you to connect with us. Whoa, I love it. I'm gonna out myself in my like, whoa. I'm gonna go ahead and practice the power of the pause and pass our final words to Jessica before we complete.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much, Jessica. I've never heard like all the interviews that I've ever done, like such beautiful recap. Like you really have a gift for being able to like boil things down. So yeah, I don't know if you know that, but I see that. So thank you. It's beautiful. And I would love to leave everybody with that mantra for the sexy feminine. I feel like it's so important for all of us to just keep remembering to give ourselves permission to be and be good enough. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Well, with that, we say goodbye, farewell for now, and thank you so much.